First of all, for those people who don't know me, my name is Konstantin Dranch, and I'm a co-organizer of a big Russian conference called Translation Forum Russia. And I have a small website devoted to study of Russian LSPs, which is called translationrating.ru. I'm going to speak about it a little bit at the end of the presentation. So, language industry in Russia. Russia is not a country that you speak of very often. It's the R in Greek, and Greek economy is going to grow to the size of US economy in maybe 10 or 20 years. So going to the Russian market for you is all about growth. It's going to be my first public speaking experience, so don't be too hard on me. I invited Renato Beninato to speak at a conference in Russia last year, and this is how he pays me back. The Russian market is not an easy market. Today at the keynote, we spoke about how easy it is to do business in Europe. But although there's much optimism, I don't think there's a big possibility, there's opportunity for growth. When your level of life goes up, when your business costs go up, that kills the profits. To get better results, you need to meet challenges. You need to meet the market, which are less transparent. You need to tackle those problems. So let's see if you can tackle the bear. The first thing which you should take in consideration about Russian market is the growth. You can see that the GDP is growing much faster than in most European countries. It's not as fast as in China or India, but it's closer to you, and it's really a good advantage. Twice more than the Czech Republic, for example, and can't be compared to Spain. So because of all the higher oil prices, our exports are really prospering, and that fuels growth in national economy. Let's see what kind of effect this GDP growth has on LSPs. So this is some figures from Common Sense Advisory, which they put up last year in St. Petersburg. 38% growth in 2009, 58% growth in 2010. That seems really outrageous. Even compared to the leaders, we've seen LanguageWire presentation with sustained growth of 30% each year. We have more. And it's just the average. My data says that the average is closer to 30 for the market leaders, which have already a big base of clients, big business. But including the smaller players, that can be as high as that. So if you want growth, we have it. Let's look at the market trends. First of all, every time you see a presentation in Europe, people are saying that prices are coming down and you need technology to survive in a lower cost market. In Russia, the prices are stable. In the crisis, 2010, this is a survey conducted by Mosgorilla website, and the respondents, more than 100 LSPs and prominent freelancers were asked, did you increase your rates last year on this year? So you can see that in 2010, half of the people kept their rates, only 5% reduced their rates. The other half increased. And in 2011, just after the crisis, 1% reduced their rates, 28% kept them at the current level, and this more than 70%, they increased their rates. So we don't have this problem. Rates are stable or even climbing up. Mostly by a small amount, 5, 8%, 10% within the ruble inflation, the 8.7 mark. But some people are really going into higher sectors, and we don't have this problem that we have to lower the cost. There's possibility. At the same time, there's a problem of high tier contracts priced around 30 euros a page. There's some financial pressure coming from enterprise sector clients, so we can speak about homogenization of the prices. It goes like this. The lower rates are up and the higher rates are down. It's going to be like this. One of the big events of this year, perhaps the most important event, is Russia's entry to World Trade Organization. It has been debated for maybe 10 years, and finally we've made it. At the moment, the effect of entry of WTO has not been noted by LSPs, but there's also potential for growth. I've highlighted several sectors where import duties have been cut. Export duties on metals have been cut. Food imports have been cut. 15%, 7.5%. Cigarettes are down by 30%. So things like this, and especially automotive sector with trucks cut off 20% over 3 years, cultivators, planes, heavy industrial equipment, it's all going down. So there'll be more imports. And probably over the course of the next 3 years, imports are going to increase. And with imports, service-oriented small businesses like translation agencies are going to grow. This is a possibility for market growth. Important change in the market of the last 3 years is maturity. Often, Russian market is not viewed as transparent. When you think about Russian market, what kind of association comes to your mind? Perhaps corruption, not really an easy way to distribute contracts. You know, you have to know certain people so that they bring you business, kickbacks, stuff like this. So it's still happening, of course. But now it's more transparent, it's more on the open. First of all, with the launch of translation forums in Russia, conferences, the information exchange between language service providers have been facilitated. We talk, we exchange information on blacklisted clients, on business practices. Foreign consultants visit Russia and know what's happening there. So you can get more or less reliable information. You can get consultation from your colleagues in the industry. That can help you if you decide to go to Russia. We also have forums now and active communication of Facebook, social networking, which was not present before. When I interviewed Istvan from Kilgrey for this presentation, he said that he liked German market, not because it's big, but because they also have forums for freelancers and language service providers. He can go to those forums and ask them questions, they'll respond. So right now, we have this kind of forums. You can get information, again. I'm not saying that our market is mature, no, but it's in its teens, you know, just after puberty. You can work with it. More trends. I'll just briefly underline some of them. The rest you can see on the screen. Public spending has come into the open in the last 2 years. You can go online to government spending portals and see all the contracts. Because of this, the market is changing. New providers are entering government spending area. I'm going to talk more about it a bit later. WTO, I've covered that. Rates, market matures. These are positive trends for any LSP which decides to do business in Russia. It makes it easier. Now, you can see many Russian LSPs in this room. They're looking for anchors in the US. And every year, European Union, every year there's going to be more and more Russian language service providers entering European markets. The time has come. Companies are growing, becoming more complex, more technically minded. And these are your prospective partners if you decide to source translations to Russia, to Russian providers. Now, the problems which we face are mostly the same as everywhere else. There is pressure from machine translation. Some of the bigger contracts, which do not have to have a very high quality, dropping in prices because machine translation is on the market. And the client always has a choice between machine translation and human translation. And although it looks blurry, the quality distinction looks blurry on paper, the price distinction is very substantial. The contract, which could be sold for hundreds of thousands of euros, often goes for machine translation for only 1,000 or two. Enterprises have suffered a big hit on their incomes because of elections this year. All these advertising campaigns, they've been funded with public sector money, usually private and state partnerships, which support Putin and other candidates. They're going to recover by autumn, by September, October, or even December, and then the market will be stable again. Finally, there's a challenge of growing business costs. The social taxes have increased in Russia, and they're approaching 30% now. Not everyone pays them. In fact, most companies do not pay all the taxes, but this problem exists. More and more freelancers, I'd say like more and more companies have to work legally because of the regulation of the regulator pressure. And that will definitely increase the cost of translation and make them less competitive. What I'm saying now that for many years we haven't been paying all the taxes or staying just with the taxes available to smaller companies, like 15% on income or 6% on revenues. Employee taxes are something which people do not want to pay, so that's why they have double accounting, financial accounting and administrative accounting. Well, that's true also for other countries in Eastern Europe, and if you go try to do business in Greece, you'll see the same. What is the size of the Russian market? The estimates are all different because there's little information. In 2008, a very good research by ELIA Association put us at $300 million and growing 15% per year. Just a year later, the estimate of Common Sense Advisory is double that. And this year, ELIA didn't do another research because it ceased to exist. This year, the estimates conservative are at 200 million and optimistic at 400 million. I'm going to talk a bit about largest Russian companies and how they became market leaders.
One question. The market you're talking about, what's the main, or what are the main language pairs? Is it just Russian English, or what is it?
Many language pairs depends on the sector. In oil industry, you have German, sometimes Italian to Russian. In localization, there's a lot of Korean to Russian, Chinese to Russian, because some of the software and especially games come from Asia. There is a market for CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Georgia. There's a market for this. And there's a market for Turkish to Russian. Actually, there are many language pairs, not only English to Russian. These estimates are based on revenues from largest Russian LSPs. They are added together, then Pareto rule, and then we just throw in several hundred million to the freelancers. I'm going to explain this. So the biggest Russian providers, I've taken several of them identified by Common Sense Advisory, like EBI Group, Logros, Janus, Ego, Neotech, several others. And then identified some of the companies which Western researchers overlooked. You can see that it's always easy to forget companies with 10 or 5 or 4 million dollars income per year just because you don't go beyond the biggest few. EBI became big just a few years ago because they have a powerful software company which they can rely on. I think many of you have seen FineReader or EBI Lingual. So they've created a very successful language division which provides services not only in Russia but around the world. I think they have some kind of 15% of business which is Spanish to English, working as an MOV. Logros Group is localization pioneer in Russia. They're very famous for Windows localization, and you can imagine what kind of, what size of project or volume of project Windows and Office is. Janus is another localization pioneer, though they started several years after Logros. Ego Translating represents a different kind of player. Those three, they get lots of business from the clients abroad. SAP, Microsoft, these are not locals. Ego represents a very successful big Russian company with 200 employees, more than 15 offices, which build this volume exclusively, almost exclusively with local clients, exporters. Neotech is a very large company which has an office very, very close to a prison. It works in tandem with Megatex, its retail branch. So you can see that the total turnover would be around $8 million per year. They focus on technical translations such as oil and gas, maybe the Russian company for oil and gas, and automotive. And they started early, so that's why they're so big. There's a whole bunch of new companies, relatively new, which start to gain revenues, technology, represented here. And I'd like to underline Transtech. It's one of the invisible companies with $10 million revenues. They got it from 1 or 2 contracts translated in Russian weapon shipments to Venezuela. And Translink, also working with large government and institutions and defense industry, although they have a substantial Russian market presence.
So Konstantin, do they work for Russian customers?
Russian customers. Government, military, that's Russian customers, definitely. Most of these companies are based either in Moscow or St. Petersburg, but Russia doesn't end with St. Petersburg and Moscow. There are big cities all over. Not here, but there you have it. There are 11 Russian cities except Moscow, including St. Petersburg, over 1 million people. These business hubs usually house large translation companies, but they're nowhere as large as the ones which are based in Moscow. So you can take this into consideration. If you want sales, the best place to do it is Moscow or St. Petersburg. All correct. The company which I'm affiliated with is based in Samara. That's around here. And despite that we have 40 employees, the turnover is not more than $1.5 million per year. But we also have lower costs. So if you go to the regions, you can have cheaper production because salaries there rarely exceed 600 or 700 euros per month. This is a breakdown of productivity. Most Russian companies have around 40,000 dollars here. Yeah, it's dollars per employee per year, with several exceptions like EBI. But EBI adds some of the software sales to its revenues just to become the top Russian LSPs, So the real business effectiveness is somewhere around the same level. This slide illustrates what I said before. The earlier you started, the better for them. Ego, Neotech, Logros, Janus, they all started very early. That helped them over the years. Even before private companies were introduced to Russia. The first private company was Phonetics in 1988. And during that time, you couldn't even have a private company as you have today. It was a cooperative for Soviet people. Soviet Union ceased, and more companies appear. But important thing, nothing new. In the latest 4 years, there hasn't been no new big company. I take it as a sign of that the market matures. There's many smaller companies, maybe 1 million, 2 million maximum, but no one big, no technically minded, no advanced provider to control the market. So it's becoming more concentrated, and soon I expect us to enter the merger and acquisition stage. You know, the market usually starts in chaos, primordial chaos, then it becomes more and more mature, and finally you have to put this pot into an oven so that the best ones become very strong. So if you look at this slide before and add up all the numbers, you get $100 million. That's the size of revenues of all the top Russian providers. Where's the money? Because the estimate's much higher. Money is here. First of all, some global MOV presence. SDL, for example, has an office in Russia. Star Group has an office in Russia. Production offices which do the production on site, but they don't disclose the numbers. These MOVs, global MOVs, have substantial presence in Russia. Lionbridge, Masterword, WeLocalize, Translation.com, and Merrillbrink. Now, there's a whole range of specialized smaller agencies which are not a part of active community. For example, Tech Input is a company which specializes exclusively in oil and gas. They have an owner, a benefactor, who has contacts in the oil industry, and this is how this kind of business is done in Russia. When you have connections, it's easy. Multilize is an example of an agency which specializes on localization. They work exclusively with foreign clients. They're not interested in partnerships or exchanging information with local LSPs. Now, the total number of LSPs in Russia is over 1,000. If you do a Yandex or Google search, Yandex is a Russian biggest search engine, you come up with 1,000 links. And most of these are functional LSPs with 1 or 2 employees, something like this. You don't have a question? No. Okay. We can't discount them. The revenues may be small, but the mass, the sheer mass, is gigantic. And finally, because salaries are lower in Russia than, for example, in Denmark, people are cheap. Major enterprises prefer to do the translation in-house. They can hire 30 people and still pay less than a rate of a big MOV. So that's where another 200 or 300 million come from. So, what's growing better than the other sectors in Russia? Because obviously, if you decide to go to Russia and set up an office without a plan in mind, that's going to fail. One of the big technology providers last year decided to open an office in Russia, and he doesn't have anything yet. A big technology producer in Europe. So if you want to really get some business, you need to focus on the sector. Primary experts like oil and gas and metals are one of these sectors. Second is infrastructure, roads, energy infrastructure, hot water pipes, stuff like this. This is going to grow in a few years. I'll explain a bit later. Medical and life science is a very interesting segment for such companies as Translink, Janus, and others, because the Russian market is not tightly regulated, and we have lots of foreign pharmaceuticals building up factories and bringing in fresh products. I'm going to talk about it later too. Government and public sector, as usual. Localization. That's what happens in the rest of the world too. So localizing software into Russian, it's just the same as localizing software in one of your languages. And on-site interpreting. Oil and gas. This is one of the biggest clients for translation companies in Russia. And probably if you look at the list of the leaders, each of them would have at least 10, 15, 20% of oil and gas clients in their portfolio. It's not really easy to enter this market, and if you decide to go there today and call Gazprom, you'll probably get a no. The perspective lies with new joint projects and especially foreign subcontractors. All the drilling process and technology today is no longer Soviet. It comes from United States, it comes from Italy. So the subcontractors which are employed to develop these oil mines and gas mines, these are an opportunity. It's easy to work with them because they're European and the volume of translation is going to be high. Medical. As I said, the market is not tightly regulated. That's why around 80% of the market of pharmaceuticals in Russia is controlled by foreign companies, 80% of imports. There has been a government initiative called Pharma 2020 to replace some of the imports with local products. So they plan by 2020 to have only 50% of imports and 50% local production. And they assigned around $6 billion to the task. At least it was promised. Not all money is arriving. Many translation companies are working in the sector to help fund research, personal training. I know that Moravia has a substantial stake on the Russian market of pharmaceutical translations. So what kind of text they translate? It's plans for new factories and descriptions for pharmaceutical products which are necessary by Russian legislation. Every pharmaceutical product has to have a description in Russia. It's lots of text. And it's still going, so perhaps this is a sector you can start with. Infrastructure. Most of Russian infrastructure has been built in Soviet times. At present, it's in a very, very bad state. There are holes in the roads. It looks like the roads were bombed. If you dig under the roads, all the pipes have rotten. The bridges are in pathetic condition. So sooner or later, all of this will have to be replaced. And Russia no longer has the Soviet technology to do it with local contractors. So all the equipment will be shipped from China, some of it from Europe. All the technology will come from abroad, and this will lead to a big increase in the amount of translation. It will be handled through Russian oligarchical structures such as Renova Holding, such as Alpha Group, such as Rostechnology, which will hand down these state-awarded contracts for billions of dollars to the local enterprises. And to get contracts from these local enterprises, you have to know the people. So the only way to enter this kind of market is to have local salespeople in Russian regions. But it's going to be big. Government sector. Since 2009, all translations in the public sector have to be sourced via tenders or public auctions. Since this legislation has been implemented, there has been a huge increase of transparent public spending. And some of the companies which never worked with public sector decided to enter it. In practice, that leads to overcrowded public tenders with 20 or 30 participants. A recent tender in Samara, the city where I come from, had 22 contractors willing to take one small contract from the state, and they brought the price to 2.5 cents per word. That's LSP price, including the translator. That doesn't seem very attractive, no? So how do they do it? I asked some companies how they do it. So they have three options. how to work with the contract like this. First of all, they can approach a translator and ask him to do the project virtually for free and award him a diploma, which will help him with further employment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Second, they can play a gambling game and try to go for a imperfect tender documentation. Sometimes they have 20 languages written in the contract, like Uzbek language, Vietnamese language, English language, and all of them have different prices. So they say, we'll do Vietnam translations for free and English translations for 7 cents a word. So the total price of the contract will go down and they'll get the contract. But in case later on this kind of state body will really have to work with Vietnamese people, this language agency will be in a very bad position. So this often leads to losses in quality, machine translation instead of human translation, and just unfulfilled contracts. This is a problem at the moment. The better price tenders are not transparent. I can give an example. There was a tender in Moscow where 8 companies tried to participate, including all the market leaders, and out of 8 companies, 6 were turned away. Only 2 remained. One of them was a wood processing company, the other eager translating. So the wood processing company, not a translation agency, won. But according to Russian legislation, if one of the contractors cannot fulfill the contract after it's been awarded, the contract passes to the second best offer. So the second best offer was 3 times as much in price as the first one. The better price tenders are not transparent, and the state bodies really wish to have those non-transparent tenders because then they can talk to the LSP before it's run and get a provider that they want. Tenders are not a happy thing for them because they can get something like this. One sector which is not often mentioned in presentation is it's the countries around Russia which share the language. Russian is spoken in these many countries, and the best kind of business you can do is in Kazakhstan. It has a lot of oil and very easy to deal with state administration. At least that's what Neotex tells me. They have an office there, and EBI has an office there. So if you set up an office in Moscow, this is your gateway to some other countries. I'm not sure about Latvia or Lithuania because they're European, but Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, these are your next options. A couple words about barriers. As you can gather from my presentation, there is a number of barriers entering this market. Not so easy, non-transparent tenders, but I'm going to underline some of them. First of all, local legal entity is a total must. Kilgrey tried to sell a server, a translation server, to one of the bigger enterprises in Russia. In course of negotiation, the client decided not to buy a server, but go for something like 6 or 8 individual licenses, just to save some money. They agreed, and afterwards, to make a contract to sell these 6 or 8 licenses, the total cost of which was just over €1,000, they had to employ a lawyer for 5 days. And the fee of that lawyer was around €1,000. So they gained maybe €200 for 6 licenses. That's why they wanted an office in Russia and a legal entity. Now, when you launch a company in Russia and try to implement a big accounting system, you very soon will discover that you cannot process all the contracts via your POOLNet or XCRF, just because administrative and financial accounting in most Russian companies are not one and the same thing. Translators get their money in envelopes or just by wire transfer, not reported on fiscal accounting. Because translators don't want to work legally, most of them. Only advanced Russian translators have their own companies, and their rates are 2 times higher than of those who don't want. So those companies who want to stay competitive often have to evade taxes and situations which arise from differences in legal and financial accounting. Most companies have 2 or 3 legal entities just to split the money or to pay to the European partners. Finally, as I said before, to sell well locally, you need to have local salespeople and go into the markets which you wouldn't go naturally in Europe. Connections, salesmen with impeccable haircuts and bags of money. It's not always like this, but sometimes it is. You should also remember the barrier. Russian translations are cheap. 5 cents per word, 10 cents per word, that's maximum. That's completely below what you get paid in Europe. But our costs are lower too. So if you're based in Denmark, you have to charge twice or thrice this number. But when you're based in Russia, you can afford this. That's the LSP rates, including translator and a proofreader. So do you want to start your business in Russia? I'm using this picture from Vesnitsov. This hero, Bogatyr, is presented with a choice to go left, right, or straight, and each way he has to make a sacrifice. So whatever you do in Russia, you have to tackle the problems. It won't be easy. If you decide to work without opening a local enterprise, without opening a local office, here's some CRM data on the biggest Russian clients, which you might find useful. If you download my presentation, you can get those links. And it's easy to translate. Financial accounting figures. If you have a vertical segment in which you work, this is where you can start. When thinking about providing services, if you don't source it to a Russian LSP, you can do it yourself, but remember this easy equation. The salaries in smaller cities are much, much smaller than in bigger cities. It's true for any European country, but in Russia the difference is striking. Moscow, which is not considered a part of Russia, it's a separate city with separate roles and separate prices. Staff translator gets 1,000 or 1,100 euros per month. But in Ufa or Nizhny Novgorod, it's half that amount. And if you go to Ukraine or Belarus, you can get a Russian translator for 1/3 of that amount. TransLink has moved its production to Kiev, I think this year or the year before. And many Russian LSPs actually are sourcing to Minsk. Not all of them, but some projects go to Minsk. If you want to acquire a Russian LSP, it's another way of entering the market. I'd say good luck. Merger and acquisition market is not developed. We've only had 3 deals. This all of the deals which have been made in Russia. So Prompt is a big Russian machine translation developer. Was purchased in 2008 by Renova Holding. It's one of these state-private partnerships, one of the biggest ones, which gets lots of state contracts and develops in all areas. So they bought it, and immediately after, we had 2 new companies launched. T-Service, which is a reseller for SDL, and their language agencies. So the managers just ran away and founded a new business. Not a very happy deal. Now, Abby, when it decided to launch translation business, they acquired a retail company, Переведем.ru. It uses another brand, ELIA language services on the Western markets now, but it took them 4 years to integrate, and still this company has minority shareholders with 40% stake. So not a bad one, but definitely not ideal for ELIA, in my opinion, my personal opinion. This is the only clean deal. The owners of AGI Triple were moving away from Russia to live in a foreign country, and they sold all their business at a low price during the crisis year to a more successful LSP. Instead of acquiring LSPs, people usually headhunt their managers and steal their business in this way. This is a very hot topic in Russia, and if you go to our forums, you'll see lots of anxiety and mutual accusations because of hiring employees and getting the clients associated with their employees. If you decide to open an office in Russia, you should remember that Russians are very fond of social networking, and we don't only use Facebook, but also local tools, which you can use to gather information or for promotions. It's a live journal, which was acquired by a Russian company, and Vkontakte. It's a Facebook clone with a huge, maybe 70 million audience in Russia. You can read industry news on mozgorilla.com and talk to translators on trworkshop.net. And this Facebook group is the one which I was talking about, our most active forum at the moment. It has more than 100 LSP managers, very active. Now, that's the end of my presentation. Just a few words about what I do. Translationrating.ru is a website which collects information on top Russian LSPs. And once per year, I make a rating based on votes. Who is the best Russian company? And all of them vote, then they get ratings. At the moment, Neotech is most popular. Definitely not the biggest, but one of the most popular. If you want to get more information, you might go there. And if you want first-hand experience, please visit Translation Forum Russia. This year it will be held in Kazan, which is the #1 Russian region for business environment, according to Forbes. Last year we had around 500 people, including Renato, which counts for 10. Hope we get a likewise audience this year. So it's the same as any linguistic conference, but with a Russian touch. So thank you. That will be all.
I have a question about your ranking. You said most popular. How do companies
it's difficult to rate companies in a market which is not very transparent. The data I've collected on their revenues, it's only a very recent thing. Before this, to rank a company, you need some kind of rating which is based on data which companies themselves do not provide. So I ask other companies, what do you think about this company? And that's what I think.